So just to give you a little overview of what we'll be going through during our event today, we'll give you a little talk about what is WEMS, Women's Health Education Made Simple. We're going to introduce some of our awesome speakers that have volunteered their time to be here with us today. They'll be going through some do's and don'ts while on electives. We'll give you some tips about being on electives. We'll give an intro to CaRMS 101, and then there'll be some time where we can answer questions that people have submitted through the Google Forms as well.
Yes, and now moving into what is WEMS. I'm sure some of you know about WEMS, but others who don't. Salwa, can you please give us a short primer on this amazing organization?
Yeah, so again, thank you so much everyone for attending. We were not anticipating this many people would attend, but we're really grateful for all of you guys to be here. WEMS stands for Women's Health Education Made Simple. What was a small little initiative turned into a passion project of mine, Dr. Tunabias's and Dr. Basrin, who's not here with us today. This organization really goes to show what a small initiative can turn into and how a mentorship and networking can take you so far. We provide evidence-based infographics, videos, and hopefully aim to create health literacy. But not only that, we also create opportunities for people like yourselves interested in women's health and advocacy by having an amazing and very large group. People can join at various levels, which we'll go through later.
So we've gone through all the things about WEMS. And when we started, we decided we'll have these core values about respect for one another, social responsibility. So what we've done is to, always be, I would just say we've always been so responsive to things that happen. So for example, we've had cases about Islamophobia, Black Lives Matter. So we are always at the point of making sure that women are heard. And also we promote leadership amongst all our core members. And one of the things that is important and being part of WEMS is that you start as an ambassador and you grow into a leader. Also, we want our organization to be easily accessible to anyone, regardless of your background. And we aim to provide accurate, evidence-based information to women out there. And also, we also focus on integrity. So whatever we post, we make sure it's correct. And also, we hold ourselves to a high standard as well. So this is all about WEMS. Next slide, please.
One more thing before we go next, we're actually hiring for our social media team. So just look out on our social media for the application. So we're offering a $2,500 scholarship to whoever who applies, and it's a commitment of a year. So if you're interested in social media, graphic design, or have any sort of experience in marketing, we'd love for you to apply. And even if you don't, we're happy to help facilitate and help you build those skills as well.
So I guess moving into the panel now, Sonia, take it away.
Awesome. So we'll just be introducing all of our speakers. You've already heard from Dr. Tunabias, but just to highlight some of her many accomplishments, Dr. Tunabias is an obstetrician gynecologist, and she's practicing at North York General Hospital. And she's held many administrative positions at North York. And she's also involved in many initiatives and was the recipient of the 2022 Postgraduate Medical Education U of T Social Responsibility Award. And she, as you know, she's the co-founder of WEMS and a central part of our organization and an excellent mentor to so many of us.
Thank you.
Next is Dr. Akanksha Kulshrestha. Okay. She is in her final year of OBGYN at U of T, and she will be continuing in a fellowship in REI. Congratulations, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Dr. Noor Bakache. She's a third-year OBGYN resident at U of T, and she's interested in global health research, advocacy, and has a focus on working with marginalized and racialized populations.
And next is Salwa. She's a second-year resident at U of T. She's one of the founding members of WEMS. She has an interest in clinical epidemiology, which she pursued at McMaster along with health research methodology. And yeah, thank you so much for supporting us, Salwa.
And if you guys haven't picked up already, these are some of our CaRMS photos. If you were looking for inspo, anything goes, anything soft that shows that you're a warm, welcoming person will be perfect for your CaRMS photos.
Perfect.
Okay, so I can get started, right? So welcome everyone. It's such an exciting night that you all can be here because, sometimes you think about CaRMS, it's like, what am I going to do? Am I ever going to get into a program? Or what do I need to do? So let me just reassure you that you will get the program of your choice. And there are things that you need to do, or maybe you're not aware, that may enhance your application. And one of the things that I always say about myself is that not just about being a co-founder of WEMS, I want to know who I am. And I think one of the things that is important for you as an applicant is to know who exactly are you. And it's important because it kind of shapes what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Are you active? Are you energetic? Do you have lots of adrenaline? Or you're just this easygoing person? Or some of us just want to avoid interactions. What kind of things would suit you? So you've got to know who you are. Am I somebody who likes my sleep, which means if I get woken up at night, I'm going to ever be grumpy? So when you decide that, you can then think to yourself, what exactly interests you? The first thing is medical or surgical. And for myself, I knew I could not do a medical specialty. It was so obvious. One, I couldn't sit still. I didn't like studying a lot. I like to see things when I'm doing. If something is wrong, I want to see it. So open the abdomen, take it out. I didn't believe in just sitting down and just memorizing things. So that is who I am. Then when you now decide what interests you, then you decide, okay, what kind of electives am I going to do? Your electives at this point in time, you cannot travel. So everybody's on the same page. So don't feel bad that, oh my God, I wish I could go somewhere. I want to go to Newfoundland, or I want to go to BC. I don't have that opportunity. Everybody's on the same level playing field. So what kind of elective would match what you want to do? So you decide, where do I want to go? Am I just going to focus on an area, or I don't mind going pan-Canadian? Okay. But it's important for you to be realistic. Okay. If you're just going to apply to one university, you may be cutting yourself short because, to be honest, you have so many talents that I think you need to explore other university apart from one. So you can ask some of your friends, you can go on their website, look at what kind of electives do they offer. For example, if you want to be GYN, it doesn't have to be only general OB/GYN. You could do gynae, you could do obstetrics, you could do gynae-onc. The important thing is to find a mentor that kind of fits your profile. And I'm trying to say that because, if you think of somebody, all they're doing is academics, and if you're not interested in academics, maybe you want to go to somebody who is a generalist. So that's important in choosing what kind of electives you're going to do. When you've chosen your elective, what's important for you to do? And I'm not going to lie to you, you want to make sure you see the whole breadth of that specialty, because there are some things that are hidden that may not suit your personality. So in OB/GYN, you look at outpatient, inpatient OR, and of course, night calls. Night calls are so important in OB/GYN. If you don't do night calls, you don't know the specialty enough. And some of the residents who are on this call will tell you that night call is one of the biggest things that everyone complains about it. So if you're somebody who loves your sleep or you get moody, maybe not the right specialty for you. So if you're doing an elective, make sure you do everything to be able to see exactly what that specialty offers. Also, how do you interact with the other stakeholders? By far, the nurses. You're going to work with nurses for the rest of your life. Allied workers, i.e. social workers, people who actually contribute to the welfare of the patient. So you've got to get away from, I am the doctor, I am the boss. You must be able to share the space with other people. So it's important to understand that. Then what are other things that you want to do? Some people may want to become oncologists in the future. And I've heard, I had a student who wanted to be an oncologist. And what he wanted to do was to do gynae first. He wasn't sure, or to do oncology after that. But eventually, he decided it was easier for him to do oncology and then go back and do gynae. So you have to figure out what kind of permutation of whatever you want to become in the future. But whatever you do in that elective, you want to see everything as much as possible. And during your elective, you must do the work. I emphasize you must do the work, because this is how you get your references and your feedback. Your feedback is not just from your preceptor. It's actually those people around you, especially fellow residents. So if you're not happy, somebody else is going to tell your preceptor and say, I worked with Sawa and she was grumpy the whole night, or, we called her, we couldn't find her, or we paged her, she was in bed, she went to bed at 10 and came out at 6 a.m. No. So you want to make sure that whatever is being done in that specialty, you are part of it. Go for the rounds, offer to see your patients, look at what they are doing within that rotation. And then how about happiness? Your preceptor may not be the best person to tell you or to show you how happy or how difficult the specialty is, because some of us are able to navigate and, just do what we need to do to stay happy and move on. Just look at the residents. Are they miserable? Are they happy? Even if you don't talk to them, you can see their demeanor. You can watch their demeanor. Look at the people around them. Look at the way they dress. Look at the way they talk. You'll be able to decipher whether this is the right specialty for you. And also, one of the things that I find also interesting is that some of my elective students are able to ask that, Dr. Tunde, is there something I can do for you, or can I help you do something? Sometimes, it speaks to my heart that somebody's watching or looking after me. So those little kind gestures are very, very important. Then, apart from choosing an elective, you need to also have a backup. I know, I want to do a surgical specialty, I want to do plastics. What else is closer to plastics in case you can't get into that program? So it's important to divide your electives. Well, maybe 80% of what you really want to do and 20% you devote it into something else that may be your backup. Whatever you do, always remember, at the end of the day, you want to be happy. You want to be fulfilled. You want to know that this is what it is for me. Okay, so can you go to the, I think this is the next one. So think about your goals, okay? What do I want to achieve? And when I look at some of my residents or some of the electives, the first thing that comes to my mind is, can I work with this person, especially night calls? Would this person be grumpy at night? Can this person be my colleague? And that takes you to the CaRMS roles, okay? Apart from being a medical expert, you want to exhibit some of the other things like collaboration. Can you work as a team? You don't want to do an elective whereby it's all about yourself, pushing your other elective students or just not being respectful of those students who are on call rotation. It always shows, no matter how you want to fake it, you want to be kind, you want to be gentle, you want to be collegiate to other learners, and you also want to be aware. There's something called situational awareness. When you get into a room, you should be able to smell with your eyes, not only with your nostrils, and look at the situation that, where do I fit into this whole situation? Okay, you know the nurses are there. Say hi to them. What can I do to help? Hello, I am so and so. Be friends with other learners. Put yourself out there. If, oh, we're looking for a volunteer to take on this patient. Oh, can I do it? Because you have the time. So those things are very important, and they become quite obvious, especially when you have the residents around. The residents are an integral part of your elective and also your reference letters, because your preceptor is going to ask the resident, did you work with Sawa? What's she like at night? So that's important. And then what are your overall goals? Happiness is important. So you want to choose a specialty where you're going to be happy. If they wake you at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's like, oh my God, I'm just waiting to be woken up at night because I love this specialty so much. Okay, that means that is the specialty you're going to choose. If you think, oh God, I just don't, oh my goodness, I don't like this patient. I want to be alone. Maybe you want to be in one room where you just read your films, you're okay, you do your own thing, and you're out of the place. So it's very, very important. Then fulfillment. Am I fulfilled at the end of the day? Do I feel happy? Have I made a difference in somebody else's life? What else could I do? What else could I learn? So you want to continue to learn. And the person you can learn from are your patients. Decent income, let's face it, we've all worked so hard. You have a staggering loan. You want to make some money. So you also, when you make money, you have to work hard. If you don't work hard, you can't make the money. So when people say to me, I don't want to work, I just want to do 1 or 2 days a week. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not going to help you pay your loan. So you're going to start off wanting a decent income. You need to do the work anyway. Work-life balance is very important. It's not just doing 2 days a week. What else can you do to ensure that you're healthy, you have enough exercises? So if you're doing your jogging in the morning, are you also listening to some music? And also make sure you keep in touch with your family. Your family are your biggest fallback to. Don't cut off your friends. Continue to be out with them, have lunches with people, an hour here, 30 minutes, spend quality time. If you're planning to have a spouse, or if you have one, make sure your spouse is also important. If you want to have children, I want to encourage you to do so. Your life does not stop with medicine. Everything has to go hand in hand. Medicine can wait. Reproductive lifestyle for women may not wait. And I truly mean it. So most of the residency programs do understand that over 50% of applicants are women. So if you think of raising a family, by no means do so. Medicine, again, will wait for you. Social responsibility. What are your responsibility to the people around you, to the patients that you look after, to the community at large? You need to give part of yourself. And that's why you are in medicine. Always remember that. And I throw EDI over there. So not just, okay, social determinants of health. What can I do to make sure that health becomes equitable for everyone? It becomes a diversity issue. How can I be inclusive? If there's something that is wrong, you want to be able to speak up wherever you are, because you're privileged by the work that you do. So I'm going to pause there, and I hope that I've been able to give you some tips. This is not all about CaRMS. This is just some of the experience that I have gone through, and I always like to share that. So I'm going to try to wait until the end and also be able to take some question and answers. So I'll be happy to do that, Sawa. Thank you so much.
We'll keep the Q&A till the end. But for now, we're just going to keep moving on. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, Tobias.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tunde-Bias. That was so helpful and gives us a taste of, what we're getting into, and more to come. So do's and don'ts of electives. Can we have Akanksha, Noor, and Salwa take us through the do's and don'ts of electives, please?
Absolutely. Welcome everyone again. And I just want to echo everything that Dr. Tunde-Bias said. Literally probably stole the words right out of my mouth, but really, follow those things. It's all about happiness and fulfillment at the end of the day. And so I really hope, you realize how exciting these electives are going to be. I know you'll be nervous. We've all been there, but really do some soul searching, make sure this is a specialty for you. And, just be enthusiastic, be passionate, be keen. We can all tell when there are medical students around us who want the specialty, who are interested in the specialty, who love women's health, and it's very apparent from their day-to-day behavior and their work ethic. And so if you're showing that, you're already, ahead of the game. And so I think it goes a long way, and everyone recognizes it, from the allied healthcare to the physicians and the residents that you'll be working with. But some additional do's: show up with the junior residents. So sometimes that could mean, you're on core rotation, they're rounding on gynae patients in the morning. Sometimes we round really early, even as early as 6 a.m. But if you can just show up and show that you're interested, you want to help prepare the charts, get the vitals, it goes such a long way, and it makes such a huge difference to the residents, because they're already being pulled in 10 different directions and they have so much to do. So even if you just show that little extra bit of enthusiasm, everyone will remember it. And like Dr. Tunde-Bias was saying, at the end of the day, your preceptor will come to the residents and ask, how was this medical student you worked with on elective? And we're all very honest. And so if someone's been very helpful, like, you can tell who those stars are that shine, and it'll reflect in your reference letters and make you stand out of the crowd of candidates. So I think that's a huge deal. And then, if you haven't been assigned to work with residents, ask for those opportunities. Even if it's 1 or 2 days and the rest of the time you're in clinic, at least you'll have that 2 days of FaceTime with the residents where you can actually chat with them about, what's life like? Are you able to have that work-life balance? Are you happy? What is something that you could have done that you've only found out later? Just, pick their brain about what residency's like, what their goals are, whether they're truly happy in what they're doing. It'll help you also with that soul searching that I was mentioning earlier. And then ask where you can be helpful. So wherever it is, whether it's on the labor floor, whether it's in clinic, just ask your staff, how can you be more helpful? If that means staying at the end of the day to help complete, some charting, or maybe the clinic's running behind and maybe you can start seeing some of the prenatal patients for the staff. It'll make such a huge difference. Again, these are tiny little things that you can do that go such a long way to show how dedicated and how enthusiastic you are about this specialty and how badly you really want it. And then the other thing I was going to say was, if you've not been assigned to call on your, let's say it's a 2-week elective, you could always volunteer and ask for a call shift. They might have to figure out, whether the core medical students are there all the time. Like you might have to go on a weekend for one night, but at least one, you'll be able to figure out whether you like call. It's busy. And so obviously, hopefully you'll be awake and helping deliver babies and doing all the other tasks like seeing gynae consults or triage consults. But I think, again, it'll make you stand out because you asked for that shift that you weren't really assigned to, just because you want to make sure that this is a specialty you're interested in. And then create your learning objectives, share them with the staff. No one can read your mind. If there's specific things you want to achieve, you want to do, you want to get better at perhaps taking histories in triage or becoming more efficient at doing gynae consults. Once again, like so many times when we're reviewing these CaRMS reference letters, the students that stand out so much are the ones who the preceptor says, oh, they're behaving like a PGY1 or 2 already. And so that goes such a long way because we remember those candidates and that makes them stand out from the rest of the people who have applied. And so just little things. Declare that you want to be in this specialty, of course. So tell people that you want to do OBGYN if this is truly what you want to do. It helps, it'll show, but it'll also help because then they will cater your learning to your goals. They will probably take more of an interest in teaching you. You never know what opportunities might come about from just having that conversation and saying, hey, I'm passionate about women's health. Perhaps maybe that's how Salwa and Dr. Tunde started working together on this initiative, right? So just little things, but they go such a long way and can create such a wonderful experience for you just throughout your whole journey in women's health. And so let people know this is what you're interested in. As you go, something I really would also tell you to do is create a list of your experiences. Anything cool you see, anything cool you do, perhaps in the OR, you get to help because the staff didn't have an assist, so you get to hold the camera during laparoscopic surgery, or you're bottom ending in a hysterectomy. Anything that you get to do that, little experiences that are so unique for you, or perhaps you got to be a part of a tough situation and maybe you were the one updating the family about what was happening. Again, keep a list of these things because it will help not just with your application, but also during your interview. And perhaps even when you're getting your reference letters, just to remind your staff about these scenarios that you came across. And then collaborate with your colleagues, your colleagues who are in your medical school class who perhaps want to do OBGYN as well. Share your experiences with them. I know it seems like a very competitive process, but I promise you, you will all get into residency. You will all be doing things that you love. And it's so important to help one another and just share the knowledge, share the wisdom. And that's essentially it in terms of some of the do's. We can move on to the don'ts.
Thank you, Akanksha.
So for some of the don'ts in clerkship and as you prepare for CaRMS, one big thing is not communicating what you're doing. And this is really important, at least for me as a resident, sort of hearing where my medical students are. So sometimes we'll say, oh, there's a gynae consult, can you go see them? And then you're just gone. And we're like, we don't know where the medical student is, or they're like hiding what is happening. Maybe the patient has dementia, can't communicate, and you're trying to contact the family. Just shooting your resident a quick text being like, oh, this is going to take a bit longer. I'm waiting for the family to call me back because the patient can't communicate, or anything along those lines. Just lets us know that you're okay, that you're not lost or struggling with something that we can be helping you with, and that you're like still doing the task that we asked you to do. And that also goes into like, if we're asking you to do something, but you have 17 other things, let us know, because if it's time sensitive, then we can delegate things differently. Asking for opportunities that may not be appropriate for your level. So this is a bit hard, especially as you go through clerkship, and especially earlier on, that you won't necessarily know what is or isn't appropriate for your level. I always found it easiest to ask the most junior resident first, being like, should I be doing this? Or like, should I ask, like, what should be happening here? But from the OB side, like, asking to do cervical checks on patients with epidurals, but like that is very appropriate. You do them with your residents. Asking to do them on an unepiduralized patients in triage, less so. because it's more uncomfortable. Why we won't put the patient through that. Asking to scrub in for a surgery, appropriate. Asking to like close fascia, maybe a bit less appropriate if you haven't operated before. So each of those steps, I would say, kind of step just a little bit outside your comfort zone when asking for the opportunities. And if unsure, kind of whisper to the junior residents, be like, what should I do? Is that okay? Can I do this? And then the third one, asking questions during stressful circumstances, is just like encompassing like awareness, social awareness. If someone's having a code or you can see that things are not well, asking a question in that moment is not appropriate. But keeping that question, because often afterwards we'll be like, do you have any questions about what just happened? And asking as we debrief later is very good. It shows us that you're interested in paying attention to what was happening during a stressful situation. But to like interrupt something urgent happening would be inappropriate. Don't undermine or undercut residents or colleagues at work. So I find that this is important. This sort of goes into the previous, like, do like work well with your colleagues, especially when you're on electives. You'll be overlapping with your CC3 core clerks on. You're going to be more experienced than them. You're going to know a bit more because you're also interested in the specialty. It doesn't look good when you make someone else look bad. That only reflects on you and makes you look worse. I find that some of the clerks I was most impressed with that are elective clerks are the ones who it's a CC3's first day and they like go out of their way to help them out and orient them. Or like, I remember once I saw an elective clerk, like in the back reviewing with the core clerk who was going to be presenting for the first time, being like, oh, and you should do this, like ask them that or whatever it was, which I thought was wonderful of them to be helping out their colleague. So undermining or undercutting, that can be both like taking over tasks that were assigned to someone else that they may be doing. It can be correcting someone or arguing, especially in front of the senior. So if you aren't sure about why a resident may be suggesting a specific plan, I think it's totally appropriate to ask them why, or say, I've seen this or I've read this, like what is happening here? Because we probably will have an explanation to why we're doing it a certain way. But arguing in front of the staff is probably less appropriate, which also leads into the continuously trying to prove your knowledge. You're there primarily to learn. I think it's so hard on electives because you're trying to balance, I'm going to be pimped, I want to show them, I know this, I've studied this, and it will show. Like when you know these things, it will show. It'll show in the like focused histories that you're taking. It'll show in the differential that you may suggest. Like these things will show up. You don't need to recite things to your residents or staff, especially in that context of like undermining others. If they're suggesting a different plan or differential or your co-clerks or co-elective students. And then lastly is treat the allied staff poorly. And then on a bigger end, like you have to treat them really well, especially on labor and delivery. We are so extremely reliant on our nurses. We are running around managing a million things at once, and having experienced nurses completely changes your shift and your day and your patient care, because they're the ones watching the tracing. They're the ones in the room constantly with the patients. They're attending to all their needs. So they are very protective of their patients because it is their patients that we're working with them. So it's really important that you defer to them. Honestly, even in early like residency, I wouldn't argue with nurses. If there was something that I wasn't sure about, I would talk to my staff and my staff can have that conversation. So if a clerk is having a disagreement with a nurse, it doesn't usually reflect well on them if it comes to patient care. So if the nurse is saying, this patient isn't ready for you to talk to them yet, like you can't do a history yet, I'm still trying to set them up, but you're arguing like, no, I was sent to go see them, I need to talk to them. Don't argue. Just text your resident and be like, the nurse is still setting the patient up. I'll talk to them as soon as they're ready. Is there something else I can do in the meantime? Like you don't need to, I understand sometimes we send you to do a task. You're like, I must do this in the most efficient way possible. But the nurses have an important job to do before. I am in third year now. I don't interrupt nurses if they're setting the patient up. Please don't do that as a clerk. And that'll extend to be more than just nurses. It'll extend to your PTs, OTs on the unit. It'll extend to your unit clerks. Oh my God, your unit clerks will make or break your call shift because they're the ones that call you to deliveries. They're the ones that call you to triage. They are the ones who contact you. So it's very important on that end. But that's a general, like, don't. I feel like the summary is like, be just a collegial person, like Dr. Tunde was saying. Like, is this a person I want to work with at 3 a.m.? And in residency specifically, or looking at clerks, is this someone that I want to teach at 3 a.m.? And is this someone, for me now, thinking of the residents that are going to be starting, the current PGY ones and the next ones, I will be their chief resident. And are these people who I want to advocate for and protect if they're having any interpersonal conflict, if they're having any struggles with their, like, the learning curve of OB, like, are these the people that I want to be the chief resident to? And do I want to work with them? And do I trust them? If I tell them, can you please do this, will that get done? If you don't get it done, please let us know, because that's the worst, I think, reflection. Oh, I guess I'll add that to the don'ts. Don't say you're going to do something and then not do it. That, I think, is the worst thing. If you say, oh, I'll start the discharge summary on this patient, and then it's 5 a.m. the next day and I'm still on night float and I'm going to discharge that patient and the discharge summary was not started on them. I don't mind. I do them all the time. But if the clerk has told me that they will, it reflects very poorly on them. So just make sure you follow through on your asks and your promises.
And all of these things don't actually only apply to you as an elective student or a clerk, but it extends to once you're in residency. All of these things are extremely applicable, especially in your first year when you're just like not sure of yourself. You're not sure what you're doing, what your role is, where you're going. And oftentimes you feel like this like need to now do everything because now all of a sudden you're a resident and you have to take over and be all of these things at once. Just remember that these things continue to apply and you continue to go about it in a stepwise fashion. And like Noor said, always ask your junior, like resident, whoever is there, what is appropriate for you to do. And always over communicating is better than not communicating or under communicating, because at least people know what you're doing and they can think of you as a safe person and someone who is reliable and trustworthy and someone that we can approach in times of like stress, and OB gets really stressful really quickly. So it's important that you really reflect on these things. And the other most important thing is that you need to also recognize, are you okay with working with these personalities? That being said, every hospital, every like different rotation you go through is not going to be the same. Different people will rotate through different sort of during different times. And so you will meet personalities that you may not jive with, but that doesn't mean that that paints the whole specialty. So you will see some people being more intense, some people being more relaxed, and some people in between, and see who those people are. And then also reflect on what kind of person you want to be. Do you want to be that intense person? Do you want to be like in between? So like, write down for yourself, like, these are the things I want to do. And this is the kind of senior I want to be, or eventually resident I want to be. And that's very important as well. So don't paint one negative experience or one extremely good experience for the whole specialty. Really reflect on what Dr. Tunde and Akanksha said earlier. Like, are you happy? Are you feeling fulfilled? Are these the patients you want to work with? And are these the people that you want to advocate for? Because ultimately it comes down to that. You can work wherever you want in the future as a staff independently. And you can choose what kind of work and life you want to have. So what you are currently experiencing, and a lot of the times residency is really hard. You will see residents cry. You will see that they're emotional and they're going through a tough time, especially as I'm currently in second year, and it's a very tough time to be in second year. And you guys have probably seen my highs and lows for whoever has rotated with me. But remember that this is like a snapshot in like the longer picture of 5 years of residency. And I know like my first year was amazing. I was so excited. I was so happy. I'm still really happy, but obviously like it's tough because we're going through like the tougher times, and then like it's a huge learning curve. And I know third year, like Noor's in third year, like she's loving it. She's enjoying it. And now Akanksha has matched to her dream fellowship. So, there are, it's like an upward climb, and eventually once you reach the top, you will be very fulfilled and you'll be happy with what you do. So don't look at it at face value, like really reflect deeply on what brings true fulfillment for you.
I was going to add one last thing for the don'ts is don't slack off when you're off service. You don't have to don't volunteer for extra emerge shifts when you're doing emerge, but we're friends with each other. Like I have friends across specialties, and if people know what you're interested in, they will sometimes reach out. Like I know I've reached out if I've had clerks who are interested in general surgery who were incredible on the rotation. I've reached out to my friends in gen surgery being like, hey, this clerk was with us on gynae. They did an amazing job. Like if you ever work with them, I will mention that to them or connect them with my friends who are in other specialties. But similarly, I've also had people message be like, this person wants OB and they were abysmal. Like just, you don't have to go above and beyond the way that you do, but show up for work, do what is asked for you, be nice and respectful to people, and just be a decent human being when you're at other services, because we talk to each other. It's always a bit surprising when people, I think we see it a lot in OB because people who aren't just interested in it just don't show up. So we tend to see it where people don't come. So just keep that in mind when you're off service, when you're not just on the specialty you're interested in.
Okay, so in terms of some of the tips to succeed, I think in addition to everything we've already talked about, read around your cases. So whether you are in OB clinic, you're in an MFM clinic, you might be on an infectious disease clinic, rotation, you could be on gyne-onc, for example. Just read around your cases. If there's something cool you've seen, go read about it that evening, and then bring it up with your staff the next day. Bring it up with your staff, bring it up with your resident. Hey, I read about this, or I saw this case report about something rare that happened. Like, could you tell me more about it? Or how often do you see this? Just show that you've been reading around it. It'll, again, go a long way in showing how dedicated you are to the specialty. And I think alongside that, what I already said was writing down these interesting experiences. So OB, you'll see all sorts of acute situations that happen, and sometimes you'll have the opportunity to be part of it. Same with the gyne OR, you might be in a situation where all the residents are on the half day and you actually get to do some of, work on some of the surgical skills, or you get to suture, or you get to hold the laparoscope or something like that. So make sure you write these down. I remember when I was going through my electives, I had a whole spreadsheet with all the CAD-MEDS roles written down. And then I tried to find situations that would kind of fit in all those CAD-MEDS roles, because you forget all these things that happen during clerkship and electives. But when it comes time for interviewing, generally when you're practicing for these interviews, you have those questions about, tell me about a difficult patient encounter, or tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult team member. And so some of these experiences you can really allude to, and you may forget if you don't write them in the moment with all the details. And then, like I said, you can also remind your preceptors to include them in the reference letters as well. And so that'll make you stand out even further. So just remember these little things as you're going through your electives. And then stay up to date with your residents, especially overnight. Make sure you volunteer. Sometimes there's depending on which hospital you're at, but you can have 10 people laboring all at once. If there's another medical student there with you, you can split up the rooms. Make sure when patients are pushing, for example, that you're there the whole time. It shows that you're dedicated to that patient. You want to follow them through their labor. The residents may be in and out, the staff will be in and out, but if you're there the whole time, it actually makes a big difference, and everyone notices that you were there, you were helpful, and you get to build that rapport with the patient, which is fantastic because they're letting you share that moment that's so intimate for them. And so if you're there and you're showing that dedication to them, they'll also kind of be happy that you're there as part of that journey and that experience with them. Offer to do consults overnight. It's crazy because we're managing postpartum, we're managing labor and delivery, gynae. Sometimes we have the high risk units that are also under our jurisdiction. So if you can help us do triage consults or gynae consults, that you're thorough, you're speedy. We don't have to go and repeat the whole history once you come back and review with us. It really helps the residents and it'll make you stand out significantly. And then this last one is so important. And I don't think everyone does this, but if you have the chance, make sure you network with the staff. So whether that means you ask at the, midway through the rotation, if you can go for a coffee and just pick their brain about their specialty, why they chose it, their journey, share your goals and experiences as well. And it's the same with the residents as well. If you can find people that you resonate with, make sure you ask to sit down with them. You can learn more about the program this way as well, because everyone has their experience with the program. Everyone takes a little something different from the program. Everyone's mentors are different. Everyone's goals are different. And so by you doing this with multiple people, you'll perhaps get a better, well-rounded idea of what the program is like, and what made people choose this program specifically. And then if you have time, I would also say even meeting with the program director is a great idea. I know right now, if you can't go away on away electives, set up a Zoom call with program directors, perhaps in a province that you are interested in going to. But again, like just little things that will make you stand out, because they might remember on the day of the interview that, hey, this person reached out to me and wanted to chat and were interested. So just, little things to make you stand out, I think, throughout your journey during your electives will go a long way in making you succeed.
And just to add a few more points to that, some things that I did during my electives were I printed out some feedback sheets that we got during our clerkship, like our core rotations. And I asked some of the senior residents that I work with overnight to just like scribble down some key comments or like things that they like thought about me. And so I actually I photocopied that and put it onto a final like Word document that I sent at the end of my rotation, just highlighting some of the things that I did during the rotation, like what kind of repairs did I do, like commenting on my surgical skills, my obstetrical skills, things that I learned, an interesting patient experience, including my picture in there as well. And then just some feedback that I got from the senior residents. And people appreciated that, because at first I would ask them if they wanted that. I wouldn't just like hand it over, but I would be like, would it be helpful for you to have like my CV and also like some of the key experiences that I wrote down from the elective? And like mostly everyone says yes, they want it, because it just like prompts them to know what to write in your personalized like letter. And it's just super helpful, because when I went back and I reviewed some of the letters that were written for me in CaRMS before you could actually download them, I saw that they actually included some of those comments that were made by the seniors, and it makes a huge difference. So think about that for yourself as well. We can go next. Okay, before the Q&A, we're just going to do a quick CaRMS 101. So I guess I fairly recently went through this. And some things that I would recommend, myself and Noor would recommend, is sign up for an account early on. So I think CaRMS is already open. So set your account up, get yourself familiarized. Like this page will be on your like screen, your home page. Every time you open up your laptop, it's going to exist there permanently until you match. So get used to it, know where things are. Definitely read up on the program descriptions. That's the key thing, something that you need to familiarize yourself with early on, because each program has specific unique requirements, specific things that they talk about, and they actually like almost like add in clues to things that you want to write about in your application. Like U of T is really big on EDI, and so like adding those like additional things that reflect your engagement with EDI advocacy is very important. So make sure you go through that. And this also applies not only to obstetrics and gynecology, but for like all like other specialties you may back up with, or you may be like parallel planning with. And then know that your elective letters are not necessarily important to be from an OB-GYN, as long as you get a letter from someone who knows you well. So someone who knows you from like fruition, essentially. Like Dr. Tunde knew me as like a new clerk. It was my second rotation ever. She saw me as a fetus, and I'm still a fetus now, but she saw how I developed in the womb and really helped nurture that for me. And so like I like held on to her, and I knew like I wanted her in my circle early on, and I wanted that relationship to really bloom. And so I reached out to her throughout like clerkship. And then this was even before I knew I wanted OB. And then once I like had decided that like I could only think about OB and that's all I wanted, I reached out to her again, near like the beginning of my 4th year. And like I've built that relationship. So just like stay engaged with your mentors, stay engaged with your elective supervisors, so that they remember you and they can write a really thorough letter about you. Nora, I don't know if you want to add.
I was just going to reassure some people too, because I know that a lot of what we're saying is super intense. I want to tell, like, I sent my CV. Maybe sometimes I sent a list of experiences. I didn't know any of the residents here because all my electives here were community based. I met 2 residents, but only once. So I didn't have any mentors, and I still like, I'm friendly with people, but it's not like I didn't have a close relationship with any of the staff or anything like that when applying. And I know it can be so stressful because you guys will not have done electives in other schools. But I just want to reassure that these are all things that add to your ability to match or to get to know a program, know if it's a good fit for you, like from your perspective, because you're also interviewing us and seeing if you want to be here. So it's just like an added step. It's not a necessity. I know it can feel very, very overwhelming. But I just wanted to say, if you're in like CC4 and you're like, oh my God, I have not done any of these things, that is okay. If you're like, I don't have a mentor, that is totally okay. Most of us don't have close friendships with staff that we've worked with. You see them for 2 weeks, you get along, and then you like maybe never see them again. I just wanted to say that that's all okay. In terms of the CaRMS part though, reading up on the program is super helpful because they also talk about their like little things that they have. And since you haven't done electives at other schools, I did this when I was applying. I reached out either to their contact person or if I knew someone who was a resident at that program, to just talk to them just candidly about what their program is like and ask about those specifics in the program. Like if their CaRMS page talks about their wellness committee or something like that, you can talk to the resident and be like, what is that like? What does that actually mean? And then, because it'll come up either in your letter of why do you want the school or later on in your interviews of what do you want the school. So I found that very helpful. It was also very helpful in creating my rank list to know just resident experiences as well as the details from the program. Those are my 2 cents.
And then just a quick one on letter writing. So your letter can be anything. Like there's no specific formula on what the letter should look like. It's really just a story about you, like what inspires you, why you want OB, what are your goals within the program, what are your achievements, what are your hopes to gain out of the program, and then what you can contribute to the program itself. And it needs to be tailored to the specific program that you're applying to and the specific school. But essentially, it's really just like a piece on that really talks about you as a person and may not necessarily be on your CV. So it could be like a story that you would not necessarily put on your CV, but something that really changed you as a human or inspired you to pursue this specialty. So really think about that. And when you're applying to the specific specialty, also reflect on who the residents are at that school. Like, do these residents look like you? Are these residents people that you want to be, or people that you look up to? Do they have the leadership opportunities you want to gain? Do they have the fellowships that you want to pursue? So like think about all those things when you're choosing the specialty that's right for you. Sorry, Dr. Chinabais, you wanted to say something?
I was going to add one more thing in talking to residents, also like take a sampling across years, because PGY1 nor PGY2 and PGY3 have very different opinions of the program and of the specialty. And like, are you talking to me after night float or not? So you can talk to, because PGY1 will tell you how they felt in transitioning to the program, being part of the program. 2 will tell you like the worst time in terms of how much call you're doing, the paro call rules, like how busy it is, how supported you are. 3 will talk about maybe their surgical experience or like ability to explore subspecialties. 4 and 5 definitely are a surgical experience, and like employability, fellowship match rates, like they'll have those kind of insights. Like PGY1, 2 have no idea what it's like to get into a fellowship. I didn't even think about it. I would not be able to tell you. But if you're coming in being like, I know I want to do REI, maybe talk to a 4 or 5, like a Concho is matched to REI, and they'll have more insight about how well this program was suited for her to achieve those goals.
Dr. Chindabias?
Oh, yes, thank you. Just to reassure everyone that, you look back at this time and say, oh my God, it wasn't so bad. Okay, so just chill. You're going to get the program of your choice. So even some of us never had mentors. Some people had mentors. What's important is who can write you a reference that reflects you and a reference that will talk about leadership, you know, problem solving, those things. Somebody who can write an instance where they worked with you and they thought you did a great job being within a team. That's all you need. It doesn't even have to be all OBs. It could be maybe you've been a swimming instructor over a period of time. That is a lifelong experience that you can talk about. And in everything that you do, there's always something that you learn from that. So those are things that you need to showcase. And don't forget, every experience makes you a better doctor, right? So if you work in the women's shelter, what makes that women's shelter part of what you want to do, either in OB/GYN or even in surgery or even in medicine? So you have to be able to tell the story. Okay, it's not all doom and gloom. You look back and say, oh my God, I wish I had slept the entire time. Okay, so chill, look at what you have, look at what you don't have right now, and just make adjustments for those things. Okay, so just to tell you, it's not as bad as we make it sound. Okay.
And just reflecting back, I think electives were like the best time of my life. Like I really enjoyed meeting the people, seeing some of the coolest things that now have become like our daily day-to-day. But like back then it was just like, mind boggling. Like I was like, wow, 20 centimeter fibroid. Oh my God. Like, these are like, so like really like enjoy those moments, like talk to your staff, talk to your like co-residents, your fellow med students, and like reflect on like how much you're enjoying it. And like heed every opportunity. Okay, we can go next. And now we're going to do the Q&A part. So this part is a free for all. So you guys can just answer whichever ones you're comfortable with. Sonia and Vrati will just ask the questions.
Perfect. So these are all the questions that people have submitted in the response form. A lot of questions focused on research and like what kind of research you've done, what kind of research it takes to get into OB programs. If anybody maybe wants to comment on that.
What I was told when I was a clerk is research is like a checkbox. It doesn't have to be. You have a few checkboxes. Interest in the specialty is one, research is another. So if you're doing research in OB, great, you've checked both those boxes. But if you're like, oh my God, I started this research in cardiology and now I'm 3 years in and I actually want OB, what am I doing? Why am I doing this research in cardiology? That's still good research. You're still checking that box. Don't abandon it. Don't panic that it's not specifically about OB. About how much is enough, I don't know. CaRMS is a black box. It's very confusing. I will say my year is very diverse. Like everyone has their little niches. Some people are really interested in medical education. They did a lot of work in that. Some people did a lot of advocacy, have no research, but have done so much community engagement and relationships with their networks. Some people only have done research and have like 1 million published papers. So it doesn't matter, I don't think, as much about like, and this is U of T, which is notoriously like very research focused. I know people that have done very little to no research coming into residency. So it's not a requirement 100%, but more so that what are your extracurriculars like, and they have to be in line with who you are and what your passions are.
I'd echo what Noor said. It does not have to be in women's health or OBGYN at all. I had a lot of research in oncology before coming in, and not even like huge RCTs or anything like that. Even if it's like a case report you published or a case series you published, it is a checkbox in some ways, but there are other ways to stand out. And if research isn't your forte, perhaps it's your advocacy, like Noor said, or your involvement with EDI in some other context. But there has to be a story, there has to be a journey through which you can show your interest in OBGYN and women's health. And so if research isn't the reason why you're interested in women's health, then perhaps there's something else. And so your application will just have to reflect that, and that's totally okay. And like again, what Noor said, we have diverse residents, some of whom have PhDs already in various women's health topics. And then there are others who have had barely anything, and they're all still in the program, and they're wonderful residents. And so don't let it define you. But yes, unfortunately, as part of your application, it will be a little bit of a checkbox that whether you have something that you're doing or not. But like I said, again, it does not have to be an OBGYN.
Yes, yeah, I agree entirely. If you have it, fine. If you don't, it's okay. You can always find something else. But always remember, even a little case series op-ed, it's important. If you did something in a school, school children, maybe talk to them about something whereby somebody can give you feedback on what you did, a little bit of advocacy here and there, as long as you can write about it, So I won't focus on, if I don't have an RCT or something like that, or PhD, honestly speaking, if everybody has that, then there's no point coming to the program. So anything, even if it's just something that you did, for example, this women's health education made simple, or something small, right? Just anything would be fine. So I don't think you should be discouraged if you don't have that.
Thank you so much. Moving into sort of the next broad field, which is the U of T program. People wanted to know what are the pros and cons of attending U of T, and if it's too big a program, and if we're able to sort of establish connections and relationships with our preceptors.
I want to preface this by saying that U of T is actually running a program-specific orientation for CaRMS. I think it's held next week or the week after. And they're running 2 of those sessions. So you can ask all your U of T specific questions then. This session wasn't necessarily meant to be for U of T, but we just had access to the U of T residents more faster. So that's why we're organizing it as a U of T thing, but it was meant for everyone. So I guess quickly going into the pros and cons of U of T is that U of T is one of the bigger programs. You have a larger cohort of residents. My year was 15 people. You have so many different hospitals to choose from that you can rotate through. So it gives you a huge diversity of experience. It also has the biggest OB center, Mount Sinai Hospital, where a lot of patients from different provinces and even some from America come for fetal procedures, which I think is a very unique experience and a privilege to have the experience of and witness as a resident. You get to learn from the biggest academic supervisors. If you're really into academia, you love research, you love advocacy, you love medical education, this might be the best school for you because a lot of the staff members have a specific focus. And even within obstetrics, specifically at Mount Sinai, even for the low risk team, each of the staff have their own specific niche area. For example, Dr. Amanda Selk does vulvar vaginal health. So she's the vulva queen. She has a podcast called the Vulva Diaries. There is another staff, Dr. Spitzer, who does global health. So there's a variety of experiences. And then the MFM is completely different too. We have a cardiac OB MFM staff. But then that's the academic part of it. You can have a mix of academic and community. So Dr. Tunde has the best of both worlds. She's an MFM. She does gynae. She does OB, and she has a very, very broad sort of I shouldn't be speaking for her, but she has a very broad scope of practice. And that's what inspired me. I was wow, in OB, you could do all these things. You can do amniocentesis, you can do ultrasound, you can do the deliveries, you can do fibroids, you can do vaginal surgeries. So, you're a urogynecologist as well. So Dr. Tunde has a very, very broad scope of practice, which I loved. So you have the opportunity to form those connections and mentorship opportunities and work in the community sites or the academic sites. So it's a very broad experience. And then the cons would be that it is a big program. So sometimes you can get lost. Not everyone will really know you. And I know like other schools really like advocate for themselves by saying that like each staff knows you really well on a personal level. That might not be the case at U of T, but I think that's okay. Like you find your people and you stick to those people. And so it's not something that I would worry too much about. The other thing is that your cohort's big too. So you might form like small little like subgroups within your cohort. You might not be mingling with all of 15 people at once because it's really hard. But you'll find your people again within the cohort. But if you are a person who likes to just have a few group of friends and like want to stay with those people, like maybe U of T is not the program for you. But otherwise, I think there is like a high volume. You get to see everything. And by the time you graduate, you'll be competent in everything you do, I think.
Yes, you said it all, Sawa. But that being said, there are other programs that will rival U of T. So don't forget that you can still, go to McMaster. They have MFM. They have the Gurus of Contraception. They have all these people, London program. You get to start operating very early because the core, they have very, very few residents. So you start doing batches in your second year. In U of T, you have to wait. So every program has its own pros and cons, and it depends on what you want to do. So if you want to do general OBGYN, or you want to be a dabbler like myself, do this, do that, there's every opportunity for you in any program. So U of T, it's unique because it's so huge, right? But a good program, you can thrive. So you want a program where you just don't want to survive, you want to thrive. It's the thriving that is important.
Yeah, you may make a decision based on where your family is. And I think that's a very, very important decision because it's a very hard program at the end of the day. And if you don't have the people that you can turn to, then it may not be the best program for you because, some days you come home and you're extremely exhausted, tired, and you're burnt out and you need someone to just give you a warm hug or like warm up food for you. And that makes a huge difference for you to just be reset and ready to go back to work the next day.
Thanks, guys. So for the next section of questions that we got, we're focused on things like personal letters and reference letters. So I guess first talk about reference letters. Is there anything specific that you think should go in there? Or you should ask your preceptor maybe to mention? And also something that I've noticed too is like how and when to ask for a letter, because sometimes it can be awkward. So how do you have any tips about that as well?
In terms of asking for a reference letter, just know when you're doing an elective, everyone's expecting that you will likely ask for one. So don't worry about asking for it or feeling burdensome. If the staff's taking you on, they know you will likely ask for one at the end. I always ask, I went to McMaster for medical school. So I actually started clerkship on an elective in Alberta. I was never going to use that letter. I asked for it anyway, because it was my first 2 weeks of clerkship. I'm sure I did a terrible job, but it was so nice to have the sort of backup and know that it's available to me in case I needed it. I also would send I would ask them at that time and say I'll reach out to them at a later time once closer to CaRMS is due. In terms of what specific things CaRMS has a little, at least I'm sure it still does. There's a little form that your preceptors will get for what they should be discussing specifically. The most that and they've written hundreds, they know how to write them. The most you can do is sort of highlight your experiences. And staff often ask the residents for our opinions as well when writing the letters. So even if you're talking to residents about that beforehand. And then if it's recommended that the 3-year from OB-GYNs, it's a lot of the CaRMS details will tell you whether they expect them to all be from OBs or not. I think I mostly did OBs for OB, and I would switch around. If I did an elective at the school, I would use a letter from whoever I did an elective with at that school for that school, but maybe not necessarily use it elsewhere if I didn't think it would be a great letter.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move into the next sort of section, which is interview advice.
Practice the tell me about yourself question. I feel like that's the first one you always get. You're like a nice 2-minute, who am I, what I like in the specialty, out of the specialty, like little brief intro to yourself. I think that came up everywhere. Be familiar with your CV. Sometimes they ask things out right off of your CV. And just know what you would talk about for these experiences. And one staff told me early on in clerkship to have a list of, tell me about a time when. So tell me about a time when you failed. Tell me about a time when you felt really fulfilled. Tell me about a time you had an interpersonal conflict and how you dealt with it. Like, that's a lot of the questions. Don't worry too much about the clinical kind of questions or like tasks ones. If you guys are doing in-person interviews, I found that it was kind of impossible to prepare for those, and they weren't absurdly difficult. That's all I could. And then I guess it's virtual. I don't know, Salwa, if yours were virtual. Yeah, I guess they were. You can.
Yeah, so for virtual, set up your background nicely, like maybe put up like pictures or like, I don't know, like put a plant there, like just for a little bit of like change. And for me, like when I was doing my CaRMS interviews, it became like a topic of discussion during my Calgary interview, where people were like, oh, wow, like, I really like how you have it decorated. And they're like, are you into interior design? And like that, we just like, it was very informal. And like the whole conversation was like surrounding that. And I felt like it was really nice and personable because they were getting to know me. So like, think about and be purposeful with like your CaRMS background. Make sure you test your audio. A lot of people in my year bought a ring light. I bought a ring light. I didn't really use it because most of the interviews were during the day. So like, I would say don't buy it, but if you want, you can. Review each school's like format, because everyone's different. Like some people will have like a panel, some people will have like the MMI format. Some may have like a combination of the two, like with the panel MMI. So like know and practice different questions and scenarios with your friends. Talk to people from other specialties as well, because most of the questions are pretty similar. And so like, it's really good opportunity for you to practice and share like sort of ideas with each other. Like I practiced with one of my friends who wanted internal medicine. Also, don't be like afraid that people will steal your answers. Like I know that was like a huge thing for some people, and I thought that was a bit petty as well. Like your story will be your story. And if people steal your story, like it will come out as disingenuous. So don't be afraid of that. The more practice you have, the more fluent you are in communicating. And also be prepared for like, they will throw in like curveballs and like weird questions. And I've had those like at Dell and like some other schools, and like things that I wasn't prepared for. And some questions were, I think, also inappropriate. Like they shouldn't have asked those. So just be like mentally prepared that you may be asked like the odd questions, and like don't visibly show it in your like on your face that, oh, like you don't know what to say. Just be like, okay, that's a great question. I'm going to think about it. Maybe look down, or like don't look up because that makes you look confused, but look down and think about it for a second. And don't answer your questions like right away. Like don't jump to a question. Like I would say, be purposeful. So again, think about it. When they ask you about like an ethical question, maybe think about both sides and make sure you prepare for both sides of the question. And you are able to justify what is right or wrong, or what's the middle ground. And like always come up with I would always come up with like 3 sort of main things that I want to talk about, 3 points. And you can ask them if you can have a paper and pencil. So I would just write down some of my thoughts, because they'll give you some time for MMIs. And then I would just like hit on those points that I want to talk about. But I think for the interviews, like I'm wondering if people we will ask you at the end if you want to run another session. I'm happy to like organize something in December, pre-interviews, and we can like go through some like CaRMS like interview prep mentorship session.
I think that would be a great idea for that.
Yeah, because there's a lot to say.
That's helpful though, just to kind of get started and thinking and organized. And the next couple of questions were just focused on like a surgical residency and like lifestyle and wellness. And I guess, how do you guys find balance with the busy schedules that you have as residents and staff?
I think I'll say, it's depending on which year you're in, this balance is easier to achieve. I think Salwa already mentioned second year is quite busy, especially in the U of T program, just because we have night float, and that's when we're doing a lot of our core rotation in obstetrics and gynecology. And so with night floats, we're on 4 nights in a row. And so it's just exhausting, and it's very hard to find time to do all the things you love. But even in the little time that you do have, I would say most of us try to prioritize the things that are important to us. So whether that's our partner or our families, or it's going to the gym, or it's a dance class, whatever it is, everyone has their own way of trying to find that balance. It might not be that you can, do it every week, or that you can, go away for trips every month or anything like that. But even if it's an hour to just sit down and watch Netflix with your partner and have a good meal, or find a couple of hours to meal prep and make some dinners for the week. It's just little things that you do to get through that year, to be honest, but life does get better. And so, in third year, fourth year, depending on the rotations you're on, it's easier to find that balance. And even with the surgical rotations, where you might be starting sometimes even at 5:30 or coming home at 2 a.m. after a long hard day, you still do have your weekends. And the time that you're not on call, you learn to value that time, and then you can prioritize the things you love and kind of schedule them into those times that you are off. So it is totally doable. It's not always easy. And so you'll find a way to make it work, but I can assure you, you will, and everyone gets through it and finds a way to be well. And if you aren't feeling well, there are also resources always there. Your colleagues are there, your staff are there, your program director is there. There's a wellness committee who check in on you from time to time. And so that's the time when you can speak up and say, hey, I'm not feeling okay. And that's when the program or your chief or your co-residents will really help you get that time to be well as well.
Yes, I can jump in, and I just want to say that it's not just OB-GYN. Any medical specialty, it's life and work balance. So it's not like OB is so crazy or family practice is easier. No, it's all medical specialty. The grass, you always remember the grass is greener on the other side. Even if you are if you're in accounting, if you're in finance, this whole situation now that we are on is stressful for everyone. So you have to just find a way. Number one is to enjoy what you're doing and feel fulfilled. So if you're happy with yourself, it goes a long way. And you're not going to be working all weekends. Definitely, you're going to be tired post-call, but then the weekends that you have, meet up with your family. Your family should still be around, at least meet, even if you can't see them, phone call, go to movies, stay with your peers, especially you want to avoid being isolated, okay? Because that's quite difficult in any residency program, especially if you're in the marginalized or underserved community. I have to say that. Make sure that you stay in touch with all your peers. And the other thing also is that someone told me once you're in residency, you need a psychotherapist. Well, things aren't that bad, but you need someone to talk to, honestly speaking. Wellness, we all need wellness. I do too. So who is your coach? You need somebody who would just say, you know what, you're doing well. You're as beautiful as ever, no matter how many black eyes or bags that you have. Somebody needs to tell you, you're just amazing. So we need that every day. If you don't have anybody, look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I'm just the best thing ever for this OB-GYN program. We all want to psych ourselves. And that's the way to do it. It's a long haul, whether you have 2 years or 5 years. that is the time that you want to learn and sponge and soak everything that you need so that at the end of the day, you can enjoy the whole specialty. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to be all gloom and doom. When you get that certificate and you walk on the stage, then that's another life, another challenges. Life is filled with challenges, so you need to embrace it and make those challenges and make them opportunities.
Thank you so much. One more section, and then if we have time, we may not.
Someone hand is up.
Yeah, are we taking questions from the audience? I think we're
waiting to the end. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just have 5 more minutes left. So maybe we'll quickly go through the next one and then we'll maybe like 2 minutes for questions.
Sure. Yeah. So pre-clerkship advice, what types of extracurricular activities can enrich CaRMS and how important are they to the application? The second question was sort of answered before, so those two would be great.
I would say any extracurricular that you feel particularly passionate about and can talk about. So throughout med school, I worked at an overdose prevention, like a safe injection site. And I talked about that in all my interviews. It has nothing to do with OB. I did not see a single pregnant patient, did not see a single gynae issue. It was just helping at a safe injection site. It was honestly mostly cleaning tables and helping the clients in and out, and getting chairs and snacks and everything ready. And I talked about that in every interview. It has nothing to do with OB, but it was really important to me and shaped what I want to do in medicine and why I want to do medicine. And so I found that to be the most relevant. So I would really recommend that you do, especially it's pre-clerkship. You don't know what you want to do yet. Just do something that you enjoy and you're passionate about, and that'll shine through. Don't feel like you need to do a million things. You can do like a lot of small initiatives, or you can do one long-term like commitment to a project. Both of those have really important value.
And I think the longer ones are probably even better because you can talk more about it. It shows that it was like something that you were truly passionate about and that you saw to fruition. Even for me, like I think since the beginning, I've been really interested in like patient education. And like I used to work I was a co-director for the Immigrant Refugee Equitable Access to Healthcare at U of T. And so I was just volunteering at like community shelters. And like during that time, I just thought about ways to educate the shelter staff and like the people staying there. And I would always ask them, like, what are some like topics we can talk about? What are like some PowerPoints I can prepare and like we can like teach? So like really just like think about what you enjoy doing and like just really like focus your energy on that. And like Noor said, it doesn't matter like if it's in women's health or not. Just somehow create a picture in your mind to tie it back to OB in the future and how this will, like all the work that you have done will be applicable to the profession in the future. Okay, we'll take a few questions and then we'll wrap up.
Right, I have a meeting now. Can I ask my question quickly?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for this session. I learned a lot from everyone of you. I just have a question. So my dream is to become a cardiologist, but I also have passion for women's health. So sometimes people like, I get tension between, going into OBGYN or follow my dream of becoming a cardiologist. Where should I guide my passion? Like, where should I start just to know exactly how to proceed that? Because I really like cardiology, but some people say there's more need to be an OB. So how to match between needs in society and your passion? Thank you.
I think there's avenue for either of those. I've met cardiologists, worked with a cardiologist that is really interested in like obstetrical cardiology specifically and sees a lot of our OB patients, like from the OB medicine side. There's also an MFM at Sinai specifically that does like cardiac conditions in pregnancy and a few of them. So I don't know if that's an answer, but I feel like you can find an avenue within OB where you can still have a big part of cardiology or within cardiology where you do a big part of OB. I also just usually tell clerks, you don't have to decide what you want to do. I applied to 3 specialties. I wanted all of them. The three of them were ranked in my top 6. I just knew where I wanted to be. I knew I would be happy in any. So you can apply to more than one specialty. You can apply to internal and OB, do electives in both, and try to find out where you might fit in best, and that can be part of your story.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And to quickly add, I think Sonia also runs like the Her Heart Matters campaign, and like it's also led by a lot of like internists that specialize like in women's cardiac health. So you can really like focus on women's health in any specialty you do. It doesn't necessarily have to be an OB, and like that's definitely not a reason to pursue OB, because at the end of the day, it's a very surgical specialty and it is quite tough. So I would say if you are interested in women's health, that may not be reason enough to go into OB. So really think about like the OB-GYN as a whole, and know whether or not you like the surgical, like hands-on part of the specialty.
Thank you so much. Ray, you have a question?
Hi, thank you. Thank you all very, very much. I had a question just about like selling yourself in personal statements and things like that. How do you talk about gaps that you see in this specialty that you feel like, hey, like I see this, I want to address this. I feel like I'm a great person for that. And I know what I want to do, and I know what like my passion could be in the specialty. How do you highlight that and talk about that without also talking down about the specialty that you also really love? You know, what does that balance look like?
I said, I find that in OB or pediatrics or family, like all the things that I applied to, was I would say, oh, I find there's a huge avenue for work in this thing, and that's part of my passion. And I would just leave it at not like, you guys do a terrible job at like whatever the passion is. You just say, I think there's a big avenue for work in this field, and that's my passion, and this is what I want to do. Sometimes they ask in interviews where they're like, where do you see the specialty in 5 years? Or what's the one big gap you find in the specialty, or things along those lines. So it's a good way to, if they bring it up, you'd have that avenue. That's my diplomatic way of saying it. I'm sure others have other ways too.
I agree. I would steer clear of saying that it's a negative or a gap, just saying that this is your passion. And I think it'll come across in the way you say it, that this is what I would like to fulfill. And I see my role as an OBGYN to do X, Y, and Z thing, without picking up that negative. I'd try to stay away from negatives in your personal statements. You're there to sell yourself. You're there to tell them why their program is amazing and why it's a good fit between the program and you. And so, yeah, just stay away from that negative part.
Thank you both.
Do we have time for one more question? Yeah. Okay.
I'm to stay a bit longer, but I know like to be respectful of all the other people's times. They will leave when they need to, but I can stay behind just a little bit longer. But if you guys need to log off, please do. And thank you so much for attending and joining and sharing your beautiful pearls and words of wisdom. I'm so grateful for all of you and to have met you and crossed paths with you. And that's like the beauty of OB. I think anyone that you meet is always willing to give back, to support you, to mentor you. And that was like also a big factor for why I pursued this career, because I really believe in the I shine, or like the shine theory. It's like you shine when other women shine, and you sort of help facilitate that. And I can really see that happen in OB. Like, I see women as powerhouses, and I see our OB colleagues as powerhouses, really advocating for women's health. And that's what drives me, and that's what makes me passionate about the program and the specialty. All right, we can go back to the question.
Okay, Maclite,
yes. And thank you, Salwa. That was such a powerful statement. So my question is, so some programs, it looks like U of T this year actually is suggesting or like requesting a maximum of 2 reference letters, which kind of changes, at least for me, the way that I was thinking about asking folks or structuring that for myself, particularly like that OB-GYN versus, folks who've potentially known you for longer or have seen you work in fields outside of medicine that can speak to some of like your core principles. And then, aside from that, I've also heard the rhetoric of get folks who can, say why you would be in a fantastic OBGYN, the skills and all of that. So when there's a smaller amount of reference letters to be submitted, does that change the advice that you have for us?
To be honest, I don't think so. Because, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, we're saying the same thing.
I honestly don't think so. You still have opportunity to present too. So if you're going to do a specialty, you want one from a specialty. If you can get two, fine. Otherwise, you just want people who know you, who can say and attest to those characteristics. I would always get one from OB-GYN, okay? If you can get two, fine. Otherwise, rather than getting one lousy letter and one good one, you avoid the lousy one and go and get one in community development. Hope that's useful.
Yes, thank you.
And just to add, it doesn't have to be OB again. I've also like surveyed some of my cohort and asked them like what specialties they use letters from, and like some of them use like infectious disease, general surgery, internal medicine. Like it can be like a broad variety, like spectrum. Doesn't have to be from like just OB. So someone who knows you really well and someone who can talk about you from like a whole CaRMS perspective.
Thank you. And we have Maria.
Hi, sorry, don't mean to keep everyone too late. I just had a question. If you guys had any advice for IMG specific applications, it's a bit different. There's a bit more limited spots. We're all Canadians applying, but we all have our own unique experiences from different medical schools, depending on what country we're in. So just wondering if you had any specific IMG focus.
I would say a lot of the same things apply. I mean, your reference letters, your personal statements, your experiences in women's health. At the end of the day, I think everyone has to speak of their journey into why they want women's health in obstetrics and gynecology, whether that's because of advocacy work or research work or your clinical interactions that have kind of sparked that interest in the field. You just need to make that shine through everything in that application, through every aspect of it, including your interviews. You're right, unfortunately for IMGs, there are fewer spots. So I would just say if you have any opportunities to perhaps do electives here, interact with some of the staff and residents here, that also goes a long way to show that you've actually taken the time to be a part of this healthcare system as well. And I think you're in a unique situation because you can draw some parallels between perhaps countries and show, perhaps that maybe how ours is better. Hopefully it is better in some ways. But you can kind of draw those parallels and show your interest in the programs here through a unique lens. So I think you're in like a very cool situation, to be honest, but just I think the similar advice, but drawing that parallel will take it one step further and make you stand out.
Yes, and I can also weigh in. If you're an IMG, I mean, there's nothing bad being an IMG at all. Okay, and like Akansha said, you bring in a lot of perspective, so which is also maturity too. So I would say, you want to apply far and wide. You also want to back up. Like family practice has more spots, right? You can still do family practice plus 1 year of OB-GYN as a fellowship if you really like women's health, or you can start with family practice. Some universities you're able to switch if you really, really love OB-GYN. But the advice is the same. Good letter of references, having that personality. You might not have done electives, but you've done observership. with one or two people. If you haven't done, even working anywhere is important. And I remember a case of someone who had worked in McDonald's, right? And, reading the letter just gave me goosebumps, right? Just working McDonald's. But everything in the work showed leadership, teamwork, things that you want to hear. So, and, we're now in the era that, the way I look at resiliency for you is different from somebody else. So all those things are so important. So I don't think you should feel like you're limited. You should still get everything that you can lay your hands on, but please apply far and wide and have a backup as well.
Also, I'm mindful of those of us here aren't IMGs. So you can connect with residents who are IMGs. I would say the best bet, I just did a quick peek at the CaRMS website for U of T specifically. There's the email for our program administrator, Jordan. So I'm sure most of the programs will have some sort of email contact that you can say, I'm an IMG, I'm really interested in your program. Can you connect me with a resident that may be willing to talk about that program and talk about what that was like applying to? Because I think they'll have a lot more specific, what that process was like. And probably the PGY 1s, 2s that had to do it through COVID will probably have better insights than the 3s and up because they got to do electives here.